Hello, Yakri here with another Dominions 5 video. So this time we're going to talk about Thaumaturgy and just go through all the spells in it and talk about what they do, and I'll point out the ones that are notably good. As with most things Dominions, even the bad spells usually have some sort of niche use, but there are some standout spells that are definitely going to be good regardless. Okay, so Sleep Ray level 0. I mean, it's the level 0 spell for Thaumaturgy. It's not very good, but knocking out enemies into a magical slumber, alright, I guess it's not that bad for level 0 spell. It's got it's the range. Oh, it's touch range. Yeah, no, it's terrible. Even for level 0 spell, it's terrible. But never mind that, we don't care about that stuff. Let's get into level 1 spells. Desiccation is actually modestly useful, I would say. Causing significant fatigue to units is pretty good. This kind of thing would be kind of nifty against like thugs and sacreds if you don't have any other options. Far Strike, not particularly useful, except in weird niche form arguments mostly, because theoretically, if you have a thug that has Earth Astral Pathing, and they have fairly high strength, like they're not a human chassis, and you cast Far Strike with range 50, right? It's pretty good, versus another thug, this is a great way to just wreck their shit at the beginning of a fight. So, perhaps you could actually end up using it in the game. I haven't so far, but it's not impossible to imagine. Blink, this is basically a commit suicide button for casters. Potentially mixed with some other spells you could have a reason to do this, but under normal circumstances there is not any reason you would ever want to do this. Generally this means you will teleport yourself away from your nice safe location at the other end of the battlefield from the enemy army and into the enemy army, or somewhere less safe than where you were to begin with. Communion Master. So I've talked about communions, in great detail in separate videos a lot of different times, so I'm not going to go over them in great detail here. Suffice it to say that communions are very good for their niche uses. Communion Master, Communion Slave, both go into that description. Horror Mark. Horror Mark is just to direct horrors away from your own army if you intend to summon them in combat. Some horrors can be fairly useful for this purpose, especially when you're in a situation where you're outmatched. So, you know, really, if the horrors manage to fuck up the enemy army and eventually lead to their army routing, you don't really care if they then decide to move on to slaughtering a bunch of units in your army before the battle ends. You know, if you're in that situation, then this can be worth using. There are better spells than actual Horror Mark to accomplish this, like Astral Geyser. However, it's an option. Dust to Dust. This is one spell. It's actually a amazingly good first level spell. It's just really powerful. It's only versus undead, of course. However, what this does is deals 22 damage, armor negating, no save, right? No magic resist save. In an area of effect ones, which basically equates to it deletes a square of undead units for just 20 fatigue at death 1 with a okay range. What this means is that death, say, an army of death 1 and 2 mages can obliterate a undead army if they have a decent, at least a little bit of a front line and access to Thaumaturgy 1, which you can get them in one turn probably if you don't have it already. So if you have undead mages, you should feel pretty confident going up against undead armies. Largely because of this spell. I think we get a better version of it later, but just Dust to Dust itself will really do a lot of work. I mean, imagine like 10 casts of that. You have 5, like it only requires death 1 mages, so you could easily have like 5 mages, 10 casts in a battle. That's going to be a good, 50 squares of undead gone. That's a lot of units. That's hundreds of units. Can make a huge difference in a battle. Okay, Decay. So Decay affecting one person is a little lackluster, especially since it's not going to have much effect during the battle usually, so not very useful. Frighten, filling a target with fear, you target units with fear. This can actually be pretty good in conjunction with other fear effects to get units to rout, or good to spam on units that have low morale to begin with in the hopes that they will fail a morale check and rout. Yeah, the later versions of the spell are a little more in the category of where I really actually want to bother using them, but it still, in theory, you could get some value out of it. Let's see. Distracts the enemy for oh, it's stun. Okay, so it stuns the unit, making them unable to act for a bit. One person, you this is pretty bad, because versus a thug, you're probably going to fail the magic resist check. It only affects one person. Still could be useful to spam against the thug when you also have units surrounding them. If you have a few mages doing it, they'll probably fail a check eventually, but a little bit weak that it just kind of disables a unit just for one turn, I think just for one turn, only if you get lucky, right? Let's see. Yeah, this kills people after combat. Only area of effect 1. I think there's I want to. They'll slowly die in the following years. So I think this diseases people. But since it's another one of these spells where it's like, oh well, it's useful after combat, but not that useful. I prefer decay. Decay, like the later options to AOE decay people, because AOE decay kind of cripples units after combat, but it often comes attached to things like Banefire in other with other things, right? If you do it with Banefire or something, you get the Banefire, and you also get the decay as a bonus. Just casting decay for itself isn't that good. Curse. This is actually reasonable to do just once versus a thug, right? If you're fighting a thug, and you're just trying to move a mage and a couple units around to take out a thug that's raiding you or something, this is a good option, because it means that if they're damaged at all, they're more likely to get an affliction, which those will add up and eventually cripple them enough that you can kill them, right? Bonds of Fire. This is actually terrible, but I think there's one later version. Prison of Fire. This is actually pretty okay though. Okay, so the reason is that this is like a lot of units will escape if they're not just regular shitty like militia or something, and only affecting one person for like the cost of the spell, that's not that great, especially since thugs will shrug it off, right? So a lot of things where it only affects one person, if it's good versus thugs or elite units, then it's still good. If it's not good versus thugs or elite units, it's terrible, because because it affects only one person. It's by default not good against hordes of chaff, right? Okay, Steel Breath. This, how to put it? This is quite good-ish. Kind of the same problem as that I was criticizing, like, Assassination, I think, for, in that it's good versus thugs and elite units, except it's magic resistance negates, which gives thugs a good chance of avoiding it, but it's a reasonable, like, desperation option. In fact, it might even be better than stun, because once you hit, if you land 2 hits with that, any thug is going to be pretty crippled and probably die to regular infantry without too much trouble. Yeah, Scrying Pool, this is actually reasonable if you need more scout information on something. You shouldn't use it to replace actual scouts, but if you know there's stuff going on in an area and you can't like spend 7 turns moving a scout over there, it's a pretty good investment. Returning, I think I've mentioned returning in conjunction with other spells before, but returning is basically the thing you do here is you cast returning, and then you'd go with some mage and send them suicidally into combat against a whole army, and hopefully they'll get hit for a light amount of damage before they get killed, right? They won't be one shot. And so you'll cast some sort of battlefield-wide spell that'll fuck up the enemy army, and then your mage will get damaged and return to your base. This is generally what you would use only for like a hero unit or some kind of hard to replace or very expensive caster. Maybe your unit had a really lucky roll, or he's got a lot of gear on him to be able to do what you need him to do to take on the army, and you don't want to lose that. So that's what you'd use returning for. Versus just a regular recruited mage that you could just recruit another one of in 1 or 2 turns, probably not worth it to invest. What is this? Even two Astral Pearls, maybe it's worth it. Actually, yeah, maybe it's worth it. But, since it's not reliable also, it kind of eh. I think that's a good way to put it. Let's see. Mind Burn. This is just a good astral nuke, right? This is what you do if you have astral mages, you don't have a lot of other ways to deal damage, and you need to take out people. This is what you do. It stays relevant against like elite units that are not thugs, or even against thugs because it's a fairly spammable spell, I suppose. But mostly like units that aren't going to have like 18 magic resist. Because if the unit has 18 magic resist, this is going to fail just so much that it's not super worth it. Unlike Soul Slay later, which of course is worth it because when it succeeds once, the unit is fucking dead. Okay, but this is not going to just insta-kill some thug, and it's not going to hit them most of the time. It's not very good. But versus, say, heavy cavalry, human heavy cavalry that have like 12, 11, 10 hit points, this is probably just going to kill them right off the bat because it's armor negating. If it gets past their magic resistance, which it has a good chance to do since they probably have like 10, 11, 12 magic resist, or something lower than that. well, probably not lower than not 10, but unless you're, it's almost 9, I think, right? Yeah. But, so that's what that's good for. And of course, if you have no other good options, just spam away. It's something is better than nothing, right? Sleep is kind of like, what you wish you had, what you're stuck with when you wish you had Mind Burn if you're, nature. Fatigue damage is good versus thugs. This is like one of those things where, yeah, okay, it's okay versus thugs, but magic resistance to gates means that a lot of the kind of units that you'd like to use this against will be very resistant to it as a tactic. Can still add up if the battle is long, and you can cast it quite a few times over between several casters, right, to eventually get 1 or 2 casts through someone's magic resistance, and then, you know, whittle them away with regular troops who can now hit this elite unit because they no longer have the benefits of high protection or high defense because of their high fatigue. Okay, rage. I mean, I don't think this is too useful. It could break up an enemy formation a bit. I've never seen anyone use it super effectively though, and I can't imagine it being really great. This is another scry. It's good for the same reason that scrying with water is good. Sailor's Death. Yeah, this one is magic resistance to the gates. This is pretty good. Area of Effect 1. Yeah, this is actually pretty good. It's kind of like an AoE Mind Burn. Yeah, this is an AoE Mind Burn. That's really what it is, basically. And it's even a little bit stronger than Mind Burn, so I'm a fan of Sailor's Death. Of course, it requires Water 3 as opposed to Astral only requiring 2, which is a bit of a problem. Because part of one of the things that makes Mind Burn great, and up here Dust to Dust, right, versus Undead really great, is that Mind Burn only takes 2, Dust to Dust only takes 1. 3-path mages are quite a lot more rare than 2-path mages, right? 2-path mages are pretty common. 1-path mages are very common. 3-path mages are kind of rare. 4-path mages are very rare. 5-path mages are exceptionally rare. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the value of spells. So this is kind of like, it's 1 tier higher, it's 3 paths, so it's an appropriate amount harder to cast than Mind Burn, in my opinion. Iron Will. What was this one? Strengthen the mind of... This is just a... Okay, it's just resist magic, but earth and only area of effect 1. Not super great. I think area of effect 1, it's just not enough area of effect. Maybe you could cast it on yourself as a earth mage, right? If you're the only one available, it'll cast it on yourself if you script that. So yeah, that's not bad. Let's see. Astral Windows is more scry, right? Not really different. Yep, okay, more scry. Teleport. This is actually really good for a few reasons. So teleport just does exactly what it says, right? You pick a province and you teleport to it within range 6, right? For 2 astral pearls. Boom. You instantly arrive at it. You can use this with thugs to raid enemy provinces, right? You can teleport to raid enemy provinces. You can use this with immobile units to teleport between provinces. So if you have an immobile pretender and you have astral magic on them, they don't have to stay immobile. You can pick up teleport, and you can teleport them to a different city if you have some reason to, even to aid in the defense of a city, although that's quite risky. But, you know, like an obelisk, the monolith, is it called the monolith? I think it's called the monolith. Monolith is really fucking hard to kill. It's a big stone piece of shit with 200 hit points and I think like 18 base protection or 20 base protection, right? It's an innate spellcaster, so that's gonna like shit all over an unprepared army if you have okay research. So yeah, this is fantastic for that reason. Additionally, some nations have level 3 priests that can teleport, and you can teleport them onto throne provinces. There are even thugs that could potentially be level 3 priests. I in fact made a thug that would teleport my prophet once to teleport them onto a province, right? So you can use that to get level 3 priests places people don't expect you to be able to get them, or at least faster than people would expect, to capture provinces, especially if you're playing a nation that normally couldn't do that. Perhaps you can only have 1 level 3 priest at a time, but you put it on a astral mage, and maybe your opponent doesn't think of the fact that you could have made your astral mage your prophet and then just teleport them 4 provinces away to cap another throne the turn after capping a throne, right? To get a rapid victory when people aren't prepared to stop you, that kind of thing. So teleport, very versatile, very good spell. Teleport and I can't remember what there's an air version of this. I think that I already covered in one of my other videos. There's an air teleport as well. So air and astral are really good for those reasons, as things to like, or paths to like add on to, say, an immobile pretender or something like that. Because of that. Like teleport on the Demi-Lich, for example, very useful. If you have like Death 8 and Astral 3, you can just, if the thing's immortal, you can just teleport onto an enemy army and drop Bone Grinding. It costs you, what, like 3 gems? Oh boy. So terrible, and you've just fucked their army. Yeah. So, anyway, Haruspex? I don't think I can pronounce that correctly. Well, this is, oh, right, so this is the Nature Scry, not Scry, like, there's one of these spells for, I believe, every magical school, and some of them are a little bit different, like the water one. There's a water underwater one that scries all the elemental places of power. There's an astral one that does that. The site search spells. That's what I'm looking for. These are the one of the site search spells. So this is the nature one. There's an astral one that site searches for every type at 9. This one will search a province at nature 9. Fun fact about these spells: if you cast it and then don't target a province, it'll automatically select a province that you haven't targeted yet, right? When you when you cast the spell. So if you just cast it and then hit OK for whatever province it picks and keep doing it, you'll go through all the provinces in your nation, I believe. Pretty sure. I tested that in Dominions 4, so I want to promise it works in Dominions 5 when I was modding for some stuff, but I'm pretty sure that works. Panic. So this is exactly what I was talking about for better fear spells. This is Area of Effect 5. I'm gonna hit a lot more squads. Just a better version of the spell. And in particular, these sort of fear spells, I recommend, if you're gonna script them as like your 5th spell, or 4th and 5th spells, right? Because you want some damage to have been done to the enemy squads before you cast Panic, right? Because you want them to, what is it? Oh wait, does that actually matter? Fuck. Now I'm second guessing myself on the morale system. So I think that improves your odds of making Panic succeed. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong though. If it doesn't, one thing that is like a separate issue is that if you have units with a fear aura, that's still true, because you want the fear aura units to get up in there and start degrading their morale, and then you add in Panic spellcasts or any sort of fear morale check spellcast. That is very effective, combining that with fear aura units. Okay, and that covers the first video of 3 on Thaumaturgy. Okay, I'm gonna do these the same way I did the enchantment set, where I do 3 levels at a time, and I'm gonna try and do a recap, probably based on the comments I get. So, yeah, hope you enjoyed. Yakri out.